Today, Abraham Lincoln is justly revered as perhaps our greatest president. But 140 years ago, Lincoln was one of the most hated men in America. Lincoln had been the target of at least one assassination attempt before the war had even started. Following his election in November 1860, conspirators hatched a plot to kill Lincoln on the way to his own inauguration.
The inaugural train was scheduled to stop in Baltimore. There, pro-secessionists would assassinate him.
Among the conspirators were many prominent Baltimore citizens, including Police Superintendent George Kane. Word of the plot reached Lincoln's security detail. They rerouted Lincoln's train to Washington, D.C. The new president did not let this attempt move him from his course. Convinced that the Union had to be preserved at all costs, he took a hard line with the rebellious Southern states.
The length that Lincoln would go to preserve the Union was great. I mean, here was a man who had the courage to do whatever needed to be done.
In the spring of 1861, secessionist troops fired on Fort Sumter. Our nation's bloodiest war had begun. By 1864, at least 500,000 Americans had died. The appalling slaughter did little for Lincoln's appeal on both sides of the Mason-Dixon line. In addition, the Confederates had been outraged by Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which had freed the slaves in the southern states.
What that proclamation does is it validates the fears of the South. It validates fears that they had in the very beginning about this president. It generates a process by which now the South is going to have to take President Lincoln out of office.
During Lincoln's presidency, there were 6 or more plots to either kill or kidnap him. At least 3 plots progressed beyond the planning stages. According to documents in the National Archives, Abraham Lincoln may have brought those assassination attempts on himself.
The perception by the Confederacy was Lincoln had authorized the capture or assassination of their president, Jefferson Davis.
The plots against Lincoln ran the gamut from the plausible to the ridiculous. In 1861, it was rumored that Southern sympathizers had sent the president-elect a jar of poisoned preserves. 2 years later, the presidential carriage was allegedly sabotaged. The driver's seat had been tampered with, throwing the driver from the coach and leaving the president's wife helpless in the back. She was seriously injured as she jumped for her life. In 1864, Confederate agents attempted to infect Lincoln with clothing contaminated with yellow fever, but the garments never made it to Washington. In addition, Confederate sympathizers hatched sporadic plots to kidnap Lincoln and use him as a hostage. But Confederate President Davis viewed these plots as violations of the rules of war.